Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is an NPC Bikini competitor. Today's guest is Jocelyn Shaw. Jocelyn, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
For sure. So Jocelyn, we're just going to jump right into 4 questions that I like to call the conversational warm-up questions. The first question that I have for you is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific routine or ritual you like to stick to on most mornings?
I don't really consider, my mornings to be a routine or a ritual, but I suppose they are. I wake up pretty early. I get up at about 4. First thing I do is have my cup of coffee and, just my quiet morning kind of setting up my daytime. A cup of coffee takes me about 30 minutes. And I kind of set my intentions for the day and just get organized and figure out, what do I need to accomplish today? What do I want to accomplish today? And then usually jump on the treadmill for a little bit and watch some TikToks actually while I'm doing that.
All right. So I want to touch on, in terms of the intentions and kind of just setting your day. Do you have a writing practice? Do you write anything down, or is it just all kind of within your mind?
So I'm a to-do list person. So for me, setting up my day and setting those intentions, I literally sit there with my planner and kind of review, do I have any specific appointments outside of work today? I have a separate work planner as well, different things that I need to accomplish and stuff. And then I like to actually sit there and write just little notes to myself, not even necessarily complete sentences, but just little notes of things that, might be important to me that day. Like if I wake up and I'm not feeling well and I'm feeling a little bit sluggish, it might be a, just keep going note to myself, or give yourself grace today, or things like that. So it's just sort of whatever pops into my mind, but I do definitely like to put it down on paper for sure.
Cool. And if you don't mind me asking, kind of when did that practice begin? And then what was the impetus behind, writing your intentions down or writing notes or words to yourself?
I would say that I'm into astrology, so bear with me here, but I'm a Virgo. I'm a list maker. I'm a to-doer. I've always kept a journal and a planner in that regard. And I suppose it wasn't even an intentional practice that started just to kind of write little bits of encouragement to myself. But I would find that I would do that in the margins of my planner that had my workouts that I was going to do, or, what errands I needed to run that day. And I would say, probably several years ago, it just turned into an unintentional morning practice where I sit there with my coffee and just sort of do a little bit of free form writing, I suppose. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So the second question in terms of the warm-up questions, this is going to kind of tie into what we were just touching on, but do you have a favorite quote, mantra, or word? And I like to preface this with, obviously, as human beings, we all go through different seasons within our lives. So kind of however you want to take it, it can be a quote, mantra, word from maybe a previous season or something from the past. It could be something presently. Again, Jocelyn, just whichever way you kind of want to take that favorite quote, mantra, or word.
Well, it's funny. As soon as you started going into this question, I was actually thinking that it depends on that phase in my life, right? So I'm glad that you highlighted sort of the aspect of the different seasons. Right now, I would say that my favorite little quote to kind of just get me through some rough patches is just a reminder to myself to flow with the go, not go with the flow, but flow with the go, which is basically it's more intentional in terms of just realizing that you have to sometimes, when you're an uptight person like me, an anxious person like me, that you have to make a conscious effort to flow with what's going on around you. You know what I mean? It's where I find that, go with the flow is a little bit more passive, and letting things happen to you. Flowing with the go is an intentional decision to just go, okay, I'm going to roll with this because this is what happened and this is the path that I'm on today. And how can I take this path and make sure that it's a positive one, or at least it's a learning one, So right now, that's where I'm at in terms of just something that kind of helps to keep me going. And I got that from my best friend Amy. She and I, the other thing that I do in the mornings is she usually gets up about an hour after me. But once she's up, we probably spend the first hour and a half, 2 hours of our day voice message chatting back and forth, and we call it our therapy time. And we'll discuss whatever dreams we just had, whatever challenges we have coming up for the day. That relationship and that morning practice has been incredibly transformative for me over the course of the last year or so. So, but yeah, I would say getting back to it, just flow with the go.
I love it. So just kind of like a follow-up question. Do you consider yourself a perfectionist then?
Yes and no. I would say, very high standards for myself. I feel like I am perhaps a little bit of an overachiever, but I, I guess I'm not one of those people that's, XYZ has to be done a specific way. It's more a reflection in terms of like whatever I just did probably wasn't good enough. You know what I mean? So maybe not that I'm a perfectionist, but maybe that I'm always striving to do just a little bit better than I did before.
Got it. All right. So the next question, is there a book or podcast that has been especially impactful in your life?
There's really not. I would love to give you some great answer about this book that I read that changed who I was at my core, my foundation. I used to be much more of an avid reader than I am now. Unfortunately, school full time, work full time, fitness pursuits, social life, all of that. I really don't. I really don't get a chance to read and stuff as much as I would like to. And when I do, frankly, it's trash. It's Harry Potter. It's entertaining stuff. It's fantasy stuff. It's not. I don't do a whole lot of character development reading, unfortunately. So.
All right. And that's why I love the podcast, because it's just raw, real, and that's where you're at, and I love it.
You're never gonna get anything from me that isn't 100% authentic. That's the truth.
I know. I've been back in Iowa now for over a year, but I know I started following you at some point in on Instagram.
Mhm.
And I lived in Colorado, so I've been following you for probably a couple of years, and I definitely get that from your social. Good though,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't have time for fake people, and I'm sure you probably have the same perspective, right? So.
Right.
All right, so just to kind of wrap up the warm-up questions, Jocelyn, what is one piece of advice, and if there's more than one, obviously, please share, but what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
I wouldn't give myself any advice because the person that I am today is somebody that, even through all my faults, I really enjoy who I am. And I became that person through my struggles, through my learning experiences. And I think that it would be a disservice to take that away from myself by, sort of cutting corners, right? So if I could give myself any advice, it might change who I was. And so, yeah, none.
Awesome.
I would let Jocelyn become Jocelyn as she was meant to.
Yep, perfect. Okay, so we're going to kind of transition from the warm-up questions into your backstory. So I always appreciate and love kind of getting the backstory of all my guests on the 127 Fit podcast. So if you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners, Jocelyn, let's just touch on like, where were you born? Any siblings? Were you involved in extracurricular activities like sports, music, stuff like that? Maybe touch on, was there an event or events or anything, maybe an individual that was impactful in your life? Let's just kind of talk about those younger years, maybe up to high school, and then we'll kind of transition from there.
Sure. So I was born in Washington State, and let's see, 1984. I'm 36. I'm an old lady now. So born in Washington State, grew up there for my first, I don't know, few years, and then we moved to Northern California for a few years, and those were some interesting years. My mom was married to a man who was pretty well off. And so my mom didn't work. My brother and I, my older brother, Joel and I, we would hang out at the country club that we belonged to all day and pretty much just spent all day in the pool, swimming. And it's funny when we lived there, I was in the second grade, I believe, first or second grade. And I had a teacher, I've always been a little bit of an artist, and I had a teacher ask us to draw our favorite place. And my favorite place was the bar at the country club because I spent so much time there. My mom would go out golfing and then I would go swimming, and she would tell me to like meet her in the bar. And while I was waiting for her, I would get to order, I'd order a Shirley Temple and sit at the bar and chat with the bartender. I spent a lot of time in there. And so I drew that picture, and then my mom went in for parent teacher conferences some, weeks later, and the teacher pulled out the drawing and showed it to my mom, and she said, "Is this the bar at the Baywood Country Club?" And my mom was mortified that her like first grader was spending all her time in a bar. So that was cool. But yeah, we lived there for a few years, and then we eventually moved back to Washington State. And yeah, I have an older brother, Joel, that I grew up with. And then some years later, my mom got remarried and she had another son with my stepfather, Kirk. So I've got a brother who's 12 years younger than me, so quite a big age difference. And then when I was in high school, my parents actually ended up moving to Texas, where my stepfather's from, and took my little brother with them. So yeah, two siblings, all kind of spread out in age a little bit and stuff, and mostly lived in Washington, but did a couple of years living in California as well. So, but I identify as a Washingtonian. So,
What about like sports and stuff like that? Were you a pretty active girl in your earlier years?
I kind of didn't really ever hit my groove in terms of a sport. I have always, well, not always, but during my younger years, I would say probably until I was in, a year out of high school, I always kind of kept to myself. I was a little bit more shy. So group sports just weren't something I was really interested in. My mom gave my brother and I, my older brother and I, like every opportunity that she could, as far as letting us participate in things. My older brother played softball, he played soccer, he played football for a little bit, I believe. Um, for me, I tried like a ballet, jazz, tap kind of dance class thing, and that was fine, but it wasn't ever anything that I loved. I kind of remember being very conscious of my little chubby redheaded body. And then I did horse riding lessons for a while, and that was a lot of fun. But I was actually more interested in grooming the horses after the lesson than I was actually riding the horse. Like to me, that was fun, but it was a little bit scary. A little bit, the animal was definitely. You're very aware that the fact that you're not really in control. So I always just like to brush them down and give them their carrot and stuff after the fact. So no, and then in high school, I didn't do any sports. I didn't really have any interest in it. And by that time, it's, all that extracurricular stuff, excuse me, isn't something that my parents would have been able to afford, to have me doing. So not really. Yeah. Not much of an athlete, in my younger years. So, which is a shame.
But you did mention kind of like the artistic stuff, and we're gonna get into that a little bit deeper here in a little bit. But so did you and you also said something about you spent quite a bit of time alone, right? So was like drawing and kind of the art side of things, was that maybe like an outlet or something that you found joy and comfort in when you were younger or not?
I think so. I think I've always had a natural ability to draw, specifically portraits is kind of my thing. And I remember after the drawing the bar incident, which is surprisingly easy to identify from, a first grader, given that it didn't say anything in the picture about where I was. I think when I was in like the second or third grade, I won an art contest, and yeah, I've always just been able to draw. I wouldn't really say that it was an outlet for me because, to be completely honest, until recently, it's not even something that I necessarily pursued. A couple of years ago, I had a surgery, and while I was recovering from that, I was just sitting there doodling one day and ended up drawing like a really awesome portrait, and I didn't know that I could do that. And then I kind of did a couple of drawings, put it down. A few months ago, picked up a pencil again and, did a few more drawings and stuff. So I feel like it's something I could be really good at if I nurtured it. It's definitely a talent that I have, but I've never really delved into it, to be completely honest. So yeah, dabbled, haven't delved.
So you mentioned that your mom and dad got a divorce. Is that correct? Did I hear you correct or not?
So my mom and my dad got divorced when I was like a year old, and then she was remarried to somebody else, and then they split up after a few years, and then she has been with my stepdad, Kirk, for 25 years now. So, yeah,
Okay.
so a couple of starter marriages, and then yeah, she's been with my stepdad for quite a while now. So.
So did that do anything to you growing up? Like in terms of obviously you didn't know your biological dad, but your I don't know, maybe call it your second stepdad when you moved out to California, and then when your mom got a divorce from him, did that impact you at all, or did you just kind of just shrug your shoulders and keep living your life as a young kid?
I'm sure it did on some level, right? But I mean, it all happened when I was so young that, who's to say what impact that really had? I don't have much of a relationship with my biological father, and it's not for any reasons other than the fact that we're both just super independent people. We'll touch base every few months, and, I would say we're good friends. We get along really well. We laugh, and we have, I'm very much like him in a lot of ways, which is funny. I think it goes to show that there is a lot of something to be said for nature versus nurture. There's definitely a lot of his characteristics that I have, even though I haven't really been around him much. But no, he's a great guy, and we get along really well. He's just not my dad. The man that my mom was married to for a few years, Cliff, he was fine. And kept in contact with him for a while after he and my mom split up. He was a nice guy. They just weren't a good couple together. And then yeah, met my stepdad, current stepdad, last stepdad, when I was 11 or so, and he's just been my dad. He's always just been my dad so far as I'm concerned. So I don't feel like I've ever been wanting as far as like a father figure or anything like that, but I'm sure there's been some impact in terms of how I view relationships, and you know, um, uh, I guess do tend to view them as temporary, So, but no, I think I've been very lucky to have some really good men in my life in that regard. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
All right, so I want to kind of transition into post high school and just kind of share with us like what were your thoughts maybe leading up to towards the end of high school? Were you planning on going to college? Did you go to college? Just talk about some of those decisions that you made post high school, if you don't mind.
So that was a very tumultuous time in my life. I mentioned earlier that my mom and dad and little brother had moved or decided to move to Texas. They did that while I was in my senior year of high school. So it was either, well, you can come with us and finish out your last few months at a new high school, which, not going to take that choice. Or try to figure something else out, but we're going to go. So my biological father lived in the same town. So that was convenient. So I actually moved in with my dad and his new wife. And I was a good kid, but I don't think that she ever had any desire to have kids, and having one around suddenly, and it was kind of taking up my dad's attention. Um, he would only take one day off from work like every 2 weeks or so, and suddenly he was wanting to spend it with me and hang out with me and stuff, which I thought was great, but she didn't necessarily agree with. So after a couple of months, basically as soon as I graduated from high school, um, they my dad was like, sorry, you got to go. Lori doesn't really like having you here. So that was awesome. So then I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college. So it wasn't even a discussion that anybody ever had with me. And looking back, I kind of wonder why. And I don't know if it's because my mom knew that like they wouldn't be able to afford it or what, but we never really had any kind of discussion. I don't recall my mom ever asking me like, what do you want to do after high school or anything. So I was just kind of trying to figure that out. And then suddenly I was left without a place to live and still no plans. So I ended up moving in with the parents of a friend of mine and kind of crashing on their couch for a few months. And I think I was, yeah, about a month out of high school at this point. And I kind of a Hail Mary, like right before I graduated, I applied to Washington State University and I actually ended up getting in. But then once I got my acceptance letter to start second semester of that year, I realized I have no way to pay for this. Like even, student aid and stuff like that. Like I've got no idea how to do this and how to do it for myself. My parents are in Texas. My dad and my stepmom clearly don't really want me around. So I was just kind of left to fend for myself. So I um, didn't do anything with it. I didn't end up going. And I just kind of tucked that letter away and forgot about it. So I started working. I had been working in a grocery store as a courtesy clerk, like all through high school, stocking, bagging groceries and all that kind of stuff. So I got a job with a friend of mine working for a company like stocking shelves, like stocking their products and stuff. And I was making actually decent money, so I could afford to move out with a friend of mine. And we got a little apartment and stuff. And really, it just turned into like me being very drunk like for about a year. And I was like, this is not, I mean, I was just turned 18. I turned 18 3 months after I graduated from high school. So, I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm just trying to survive. And, you know, all I knew is that I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to struggle. I was really intelligent. I just didn't have anybody that helped me get set up and like nobody ever asked me those questions and had a conversation with me about like, hey, what do you want to do? Let's figure it out. So one day I just decided, you know, I wanted a way to pay for school. So I looked at the Air Force and I went, okay, that looks like a good idea. They'll help me pay for school. And I went and signed up. And so then, yeah, I graduated high school in 2002. So about a year later, 2003, after I had partied for a while and couldn't really see any other way of me getting out of that situation, yeah, left for Air Force basic training. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's. I wanna break that down a little bit. So, but first of all, before we kind of head in that direction, like when you were younger, like junior high, high school, or whatever. Like, what did you want to be, or like what was kind of like? Did you have like a dream, or did you have like a goal or a vision, or like, hey, I want to be a doctor, a veterinary, or something like that? Was there anything like that that you can think of or that comes to the forefront when I ask you that question or not?
You know what? There's nothing that I ever recall thinking that would be really cool to do. I just didn't really ever think about my future. And to be completely honest, my older brother at that point in time, Joel, he had gotten really heavily involved in drugs, was in and out of jail or, juvie, was in and out of rehab. And I think it took up all of the family's time and attention. It took up my parents' attention. I was just over here trying to be a good kid, and I was. But I kind of took care of myself. I mean, once I turned 16 and I got a car, I worked and had my own spending money, and just kind of didn't really even see far enough ahead to formulate a plan. I think I was just kind of in survival mode. So yeah, it, it wasn't up until probably the time that I got out of the military that I ever really thought about like what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do for a living? So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so let's touch on a little bit, the Air Force because obviously a lot of us, that are going to be listening to this never had that experience. Maybe they had a family member or a relative or something in some sort of branch of the military, but a lot of people, don't serve in the military. And so, from your personal perspective and experiences, what was that time like for you in the Air Force? And then, how many years did you end up serving total?
I mean, it was completely transformative. Best decision I ever made. Like I said, I've always been, or I always was a good kid. I was always very intelligent. I got good grades. I did everything that I was supposed to. I had good friends, but I just didn't have a plan for my life. And unfortunately, I think because of the situation with my parents, dealing with my older brother, and then I also had a younger brother at that point in time who required a lot of attention. Um, just not having the attention from them that I needed, not having the financial help that I needed. Like I said, I was just a little bit lost, and the Air Force gave me that sense of direction. And I've always been a very organized person. You never have to tell me twice to get something done. I just have that inherent, desire to accomplish things. So for me, it was just, fit like a glove, fit like a glove. I loved having structure and purpose and things that I needed to accomplish each day. So I joined in August of 2003 and went to basic training, and I was trained as an intel analyst. So I did that in a traditional role, I would say, for about 4 years until I volunteered for deployment to, let's see, I think I went to Iraq that first time. Volunteered for deployment to Iraq, and that deployment happened to be in support of we'll call it a data mast unit, a covered unit. And they liked the work that I did there, and so they actually recruited me into their unit. So once I was done with that deployment, went home to my station I had been at in Northern California and packed up my stuff. And then I flew off to North Carolina to be a part of this specially manned unit. So then I spent the last 5-6 years that I was in, I did 10 years total, deploying and doing special ops and working with, tip of the spear, best of the best of the best. Can't talk about it stuff. So it was, it was life changing to say the least. So I ended up getting out because it was so life changing that I started to get a lot of anxiety, started to get a lot of PTSD. I spent most of my time deployed, and when I was home, it was still such a high ops tempo, constantly training, and the kind of training that I was going through was very severely, purposely mentally and physically taxing survival style training, driving, shooting horses, things like that. So, that takes a toll on you. But there was one particular incident on my last deployment to Afghanistan where we lost 31 people on one mission, and after that I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. So it was time to get out, which I loved being in the military and it suited me, but at the same time I was starting to feel myself slip away a little bit, so I would have loved to have stayed in for 20 years and retired, but I was just exhausted. And I wasn't the only one. It was a pretty new unit that I was in, and it was pretty small, pretty close knit. And the day after I left, I was driving from North Carolina to, my new home in Colorado. I was on the road and my first sergeant called and said, hey, so-and-so just killed themselves. And then about a year after that, another person killed themselves. So it started to become, and statistically speaking, it being a very small unit, a lot of people were committing suicide. So it was a big look for them as far as like, okay, what can we do to reduce some of the stress on these people? Because if the mission isn't killing them, then they're killing themselves. So like I said, would have loved to have stayed in, but on the one hand, that unit was too stressful, and on the other hand, I got spoiled. I got used to being able to wear civilian clothes and go out into cool missions and, work with, the deltas and SEALs and, special forces. I was embedded in all those units. I didn't want to go back to working in like, quote unquote, regular Air Force. I didn't want to go back to doing like a boring job where I'm sitting there pushing a pencil, so I made the decision to get out. And it was at that point that I was like, well, what do I want to do? I had discovered that, I had a passion for fitness and for training while I was in. I had been featured on several different like fitness websites and things like that. So I was like, well, fitness is a thing that I enjoy. So I'm going to get out. I'm going to take my GI Bill. I was so busy while I was in the military. I only got a chance to complete one degree. So my whole I'm going to get all the education I can plan didn't really work out too well. So I was like, I'm going to go back to school and be a student full time and, pursue personal training and fitness and see where that takes me.
So before we kind of step into the fitness side of things, what was your experience like as a female in the military?
I don't think I ever had any issues. I know that for some women, the military has been a hostile environment, and I feel for those women absolutely. And I don't want to be controversial. However, I do feel like it highly depends on what branch of the military you choose to go into. And the Air Force is zero tolerance for any sort of sexist behavior. One of the women that was in my special duty unit that I was a part of, she was the first female chief master sergeant in her career field. Like the Air Force is very pro women, and I don't think I've ever felt any sort of distinction between males and females, and in that regard. Even in deployed environments, I would say that there were definitely situations that I was put into that I was extremely aware of the fact that I was a woman, but it wasn't because of the military. It was because of the countries that I was in. I remember flying through Saudi Arabia and having to hang out there for about a day or so on my way to Afghanistan one time. All of my blonde haired, green eyed, makeup on in civilian clothes. And I was very aware of the fact that there were several people that would have loved to have killed me given the opportunity. Just hanging out at the airport. I definitely got followed around a lot by a lot of the local nationals that would work on the military installations when I was overseas and stuff. I did have issues with some of the local nationals like stealing articles of my clothing out of the laundry room when I was, doing my laundry every week and stuff. So there were definitely situations that I was put in that were uncomfortable for me, but given the fact that I had, much more harrowing experiences, I should say, I wasn't ultra concerned with it. It was just sort of the way things were.
So what would you say is like the main takeaway from that 10 years of service in terms of like personal growth or like a lesson learned, if that makes sense?
I would struggle to sum that up into any concise statement. Like I said, I just fit in the military. It worked for me, and some days I do regret getting out because I look at it now and I go, shoot, it's 2021. I would have been retiring here in a couple of years, and I'm sure I would have been a senior master sergeant by now and would have been living a completely different life and probably would have done a lot more traveling and stuff. But just one general life lesson is basically, the yesterday is history, right? Tomorrow's a mystery and today's a gift, and that's why they call it the present. So you just got to be where you are. But I think the military taught me that, your mental control of a situation is everything. And then that has transitioned into my life in fitness as well. Like mentally, you are able to accomplish anything. Your mind is going to give up before your body will. So with all that combat training that I did, all the survival training, all of that kind of stuff, it's brutal. But I remember being in one survival school, and we had probably only been there like a day and a half. And the guy next to me is losing his mind. And he just couldn't, his mind was starting to go that quickly. And I'm like, how do you not see that this is just a scenario? And that at the end of this, these guys are going to turn around and like take us out for beers. You know what I mean? Like this is them doing their job, and we're going to play our little scenario and do our job, and then we're going to learn the things that we're supposed to learn. Like, you should enjoy being here. This is fun. Um, Not everybody sees things that way, you know. So I just think mastery of your own mind is something that you know, I wouldn't say that I've achieved, but it's a constant pursuit of mine. And I don't think I would have realized how malleable that is and what an amazing tool that is had it not been for the military.
For sure. All right, so you get out of the military after serving for 10 years, and then what did, I know you said something about, I think you said college or something. So what did those first few years out of the military look like for you, Jocelyn?
Sure. So I had met my ex-husband, Brian, while I was stationed in North Carolina, and he had gotten orders back out here to Fort Carson in Colorado. So when I made the decision to separate, it was so that I could be with him, and just, you know, again, start another chapter of my life. So I decided to take advantage of the fact that I didn't necessarily have to work, and I went to school full time. And the first degree I pursued, I got a communications applications technology degree when I was in the military. And then as soon as I got out, I was like, well, I think I'd like to be a personal trainer. I think I'd like to be involved in the fitness industry. So I got a degree in personal training, and as well as certifications through ACE and NASM, and started my own training company, which I don't train a lot of clients now. It's pretty part time, but I do still have clients that I work with online. So yeah, I've been training people online since 2014, and then as soon as I finished up that degree, I also sort of realized that I had more of a passion for massage therapy. So I continued on, you know, that track and went to school just back to back, rolled right into my next degree. And I got a degree in massage therapy as well, and then became a licensed massage therapist. Um, so once I finished that degree, I started working full time at a spa doing massage, and then I was training clients on the side. So
Cool. All right. So, like, I know you kind of mentioned that, you know, you're like, I think I'm just going to get into fitness or something. That's kind of something that you were interested in. Where, and kind of going back to the mindset thing, but, you know, during that time, because obviously in the military, it's like, you know, there's a lot of structure, and it's kind of like, maybe it was, obviously there's, you know, structure with what you were doing, but maybe you had a little bit more flexibility than big military, but there's obviously a lot of structure and kind of like, do this, do this, do this, do this. Now, was it kind of a hard transition for you when you left the military to kind of like retain that structure, or was there like some wandering within all that? Even though you kind of were like going, you know, being a personal trainer, doing the massage, like where was your? I guess the question I have is, where was your mindset at during that time of the personal training and the massage, getting out of the military?
sure. So it actually, my previous unit, like I mentioned, was pretty, even though I was in the military, it was pretty casual. You know, we wore civilian clothes a lot. When we weren't deployed, you know, weren't training, we kind of made our own schedules. We, you know, in and out of the office, I'm going to take time off, do whatever. They knew that they put us through an extremely rough ops tempo. So we really were like a family. We really were very close, and we took care of each other as much as we could. So things were pretty flexible. That's why one of the reasons, like I said, I didn't want to stay in, because I didn't want to go back to a traditional unit where they were telling me what time I had to come to work, what time I could leave at, that kind of thing. I like being somewhat autonomous when it comes to my schedule, my time. I'm very selfish with my own time. So I did actually get a lot of freedom in my last unit. And then, ironically, when I went back to school, the college that I chose to attend had a very high number of veterans there. Plus, my husband was still in the military. So I was still surrounded by other military people who were very much like me. So I feel like having that sort of support structure, people who understand you, is incredibly important. And I still felt like I was part of the military because, my husband got up and went on base every day, and he was still deploying and that kind of thing. So, um, it wasn't a tough transition for me at all. Even when I was in school full time, I worked just for some extra cash. I worked at a buddy of mine. He owned a supplement shop, and he was actually in the same unit as my husband. So he was even active duty military. So I still was surrounded. I was still in that cocoon of military folks, and um, I'm very thankful for that. So for me, as far as like letting go of the structure of things, like I mentioned, even when I was a kid, I was a very structured person. I liked having a routine. I liked accomplishing things, checking things off my list. The military didn't give me that. The military just gave me a safe space to be the organized, controlling weirdo that I am. So nothing really changed. It was kind of an easy transition. Honestly, the hardest thing for me was just kind of figuring out, like, making my own medical appointments, and where do I have to go for this and where do I have to go for that, and going, oh shoot, I can paint my nails like all kinds of fun colors now, and that kind of thing. But really, it was a pretty easy transition.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into all things fitness. I know you just competed last week, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to bring you on. But first of all, before we kind of get into the competition side of things, like from your perspective, like what is the value? What is the importance? Like what is the draw for you specifically, Jocelyn, in terms of we'll just use the blanket word fitness.
It provides a sense of structure for me. And same thing that the military did. I need to have structure. I need to have routine. I need to have kind of dependability, right? But also, you know, it's how many thousands of benefits are there just in terms of, physical, mental, spiritual for fitness. I mean, it fits in with my lifestyle and it gives me structure, but ultimately I'm so in tune with my body, and it's because of the fact that I keep it healthy. And even on the one end of the spectrum, I look and I see people that I was friends with in high school, and they look like crap. And I know they feel like crap too. And people are asking me how I stay fit and telling me how great I look and all this and that. And I'm like, it's not about how I look. How I look is a byproduct of the good things that I'm doing for myself physically. I'm staying hydrated. I'm eating good food. I sleep a solid 8 hours a night. I don't drink alcohol. It just, those are not things that I do because I want to look a certain way. It's just, the better you treat your body, the more capable your body is of telling you what it needs. And I just feel like it is, it's that whole person approach. I don't think you can be healthy mentally and spiritually and even socially if you don't keep yourself healthy physically. And once you start to kind of clean those things up, because I wasn't always this way. Right after high school and stuff, I went through that phase where I was just partying and drinking all the time. And when I first joined the military, I had no clue, not a clue about fitness stuff. I had no idea what a calorie was. I mean, I didn't know how to train. I didn't know how to work out. And, I taught myself those things. I spent hours on the old bodybuilding.com forums, with Alan Aragon and some of these other guys, and just sort of like teaching each other. And like, it's funny because one of my kind of like claims to fame is the acronym, IIFYM, if it fits your macros. Me and a couple other guys came up with that in the bodybuilding.com forums way back in like 2003, because we, talking to each other, and people kept going, well, can I have this? Can I have that? And we all just kept going, if it fits your macros, if it fits your macros and stuff. And it became a thing. And now it's like it's a known thing, if it fits your macros, which is something I still do to this day. I don't do meal plans, I do macros, but, but point being though, back to your original question, it's just something that is a part of me, just like structure, just like organization is just a part of me. And I mean, I can't, the people who don't make fitness some part of their lives, I don't understand those people. It just blows my mind. It just blows my mind how you can not want to move your body and, feed it right and put good things in it. I don't know. I just don't understand.
Okay, so I'm going to read this, and before we started recording, I said if it was cool with you, I was going to read this post on your Instagram,
Mhm.
and this is a little bit of what you were just kind of like talking about, right? But I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper into this post. So I'm just going to read this. This is again from your Instagram, and then I'll just probably have like a follow up question or two. But it says this isn't about anything physical. It's 100% mental. I was unhappy in the life I had created and wasn't being authentic. Over the past few years, I've grown into myself, and the internal changes have reflected externally. I love myself now. I know who I am and what I bring to the table. I still have things I'm working on and lessons to learn, but the growth never stops. If you want to change the outside, you have to start within. And this was a post on February 23rd, it looks like, of this year. So, um, first of all, like talk about, I want to, there's a few things I want to kind of pull out from that post.
Mhm.
And the first thing, Jocelyn, is like, because this is something I believe in, like, you know, like the paintbrush, so to speak, is in our hands, right? Like we have the opportunity as human beings to, for the most part, especially within our country, we get to basically create the life that we want, right? I mean, that's
Absolutely.
beautiful, amazing things about living in our country is like we have so much freedom to do what we want.
Mhm.
So I was unhappy in the life I had created and wasn't being authentic. So can you just kind of like, as specific as you want to get, it's up to you. But like, what does that mean? Like at your mindset in your life at that point, this life that you had created, you know, and you weren't being authentic. Like, what does that mean? Where were you at mentally in your life at that point?
Well, I mean, yeah, and I'm an open book, so I wasn't always though, and I mentioned previously that when I had moved out here to Colorado, I had been married at the time, and my now ex-husband, he is an amazing guy, but the military, his job as 20 years special forces guy, seeing and dealing in a lot of death, it really impacted him, and it broke our marriage apart. He and I dated for about a year and then got engaged and then spent a year while we were engaged living apart. He had moved back to Colorado and then spent the first year of our marriage living apart. So by the time I finally got to move out here to be with him, we had already, been together apart for 2 years. He got deployed about a couple of weeks before I got here. And so then even my first 9 months in Colorado, he was gone. So when he came back from that deployment, he was a different person. They lost a lot of people right at the end of it, not on their team, but I think on some of their partner nation folks. And his best friend of 20 years um, killed himself. Like right before Brian got back, and it was a big deal. And I think he just kind of shut down, and we no longer had any kind of communication or intimacy at all in our relationship, and that went on for 5 years, and it just kind of, I felt like I was very alone, and I felt like I was playing a role where I was like, okay, I'm married. That's my role. And so I had friends, but I didn't have a lot of people that I spent time with. And I think because of the fact that I was, just kind of lonely and, didn't feel appreciated in that marriage, I developed a really bad eating disorder. Like I just like binge eating disorder, which led into like purging as well. And I just felt like completely trapped in that and had like no way out. And it was ruining my mental health. It was ruining my body that I'd worked so hard on creating and shaping. And I no longer felt like myself because I wasn't like a fit, healthy, happy person anymore. And so finally, and I didn't want to leave because I knew he was a good man. He was a good man, and there was, nothing wrong with him. He treated me well. It just there was no intimacy. And so finally, in early 2018, after some back and forth, I finally, was just said, "Hey, we tried. I asked you for counseling. You didn't want to do it. You're so shut down. I can't do this anymore. So I have to go." So I had been working all that time, not all that time, but I had been working for those few years as a massage therapist and personal trainer. And it was at that point that I decided to get back into government work because I knew I was going to have to support myself. So I interviewed and got a position as a special investigator. And then, yeah, packed up my stuff, got a divorce, and moved up here to Denver. I'd been living in Colorado Springs, and then just set out on a mission to figure out, okay, who am I now? I have, I've got a new job. I've got no friends up here. I don't know anybody. I have a whole new life that I need to create for myself. So let's go on a little adventure and see how that unfolds. And I did. And so over the last couple of years, I have gotten back into what interests me. I now work for an aerospace engineering company. It's a great company, and I'm very lucky to be there. I have since started working on my master's, so I'm doing that currently. I've gotten back into competing, which I just did this past weekend, and will do again later this summer. More importantly, though, I've what's the word I'm looking for? I have developed this core group of girlfriends, like just the best people. And I feel like the people that you surround yourself are a reflection of you. And I'm so lucky to have the friends and the support that I have, because that was something that was missing in my life for a lot of years. Like when I got out of the military up until just recently, I didn't really have like the support of like a tribe of people, and I do now, and it's been completely transformative. So I've gotten back in touch with my own, passions, and have branched out socially. And like I said, now I own my own home, and so yeah, I'm very proud of the life that I have built for myself in the last few years. I basically had to start over from nothing, and I went from a life that I thought I wanted and that I thought was what I was supposed to be doing, to now just doing whatever I want to do. And it's amazing.
Okay, so just one thing I want to touch on, and then I want to ask you one more thing in terms of this post, and then we'll move on. But like I've had a lot of people on the podcast and had a lot of different conversations that have led to a lot of different places over the last almost 3 years of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And like in terms of, I just want to touch on the divorce thing, right? Because I feel like a lot of ladies that I've heard talk about, like whether it's a marriage or being in a toxic relationship or an unhealthy relationship or whatever, I feel like I've heard a lot of ladies talk about maybe the fear, right, of like saying I want a divorce, or the fear of leaving this individual or what have you. And unfortunately, from what I've heard, there's a lot of specifically ladies that stay in these relationships, right? And they're physically alive, but they're dead inside, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for you, because I believe this could be something very impactful for somebody listening to this, or a group of people listening to this. Like, I don't want to say what was the final straw that broke the camel's back, but was there some hesitancy? Was there some fear? Was there like maybe something inside? It's like, well, this again, like this is what I'm supposed to do. I've got to stay in here for the rest of my life. Like, what was there an internal struggle for you, Jocelyn, to like actually follow through with the divorce? And then, what was kind of like your thought process when you were finally like, all right, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, 100%. I went back and forth on it for months, just internally, just struggling. And, I saw the relationships that some of my, friends were in, like through social media and stuff like that. I saw people going out and like, you know, having fun and enjoying their lives, and I just was like, I don't want to not enjoy my life. And I feel like he and I don't have anything in common anymore. Like, he doesn't want to go out and do the things that I want to do. I don't want to do the things that he wants to do. And I feel prematurely old. I feel spiritually old right now, and I don't like this life. I'm a vibrant person, and I want to go out and enjoy myself, and I feel like I'm wasting my life. And I just knew that fundamentally, at our cores, we were different people, and I was not going to be able to get him onto the path that I wanted to be on. So, but I also felt like he had been through so much, would me leaving be detrimental to his mental health? I didn't want to hurt him, and not in just an ego way. I felt like that would be, something that would lead to possibly him hurting himself physically. I wasn't sure. I was scared for his safety and his well-being, but ultimately I feel like you have to make that decision. You can't live your life for other people. It doesn't matter if they're your spouse, your friends, your kids. You can't, you can't live your life. You got to put on your own oxygen mask first, right? You cannot be there for people. You cannot be a strong person for people around you if you are empty. And that's how I felt. And so, yeah, ultimately, I'm not even sure if there was a final straw, but I had met somebody and we had talked a little bit, and I went, wow, I kind of like this person. I've got a little crush on this person. And that to me was enough to make me go, if you have romantic feelings for somebody else, it's time to leave. You know what I mean? It's your attention isn't here anymore. And now you're thinking about a life that you would like to have, and you feel like you're missing out on it. Like, that is not where we need to be anymore. So I just, one day just went, okay, well, exhale, here we go. And said, hey, I want a divorce. And kind of true to form, he just sort of went, okay. And then that was it. And then, over the next few weeks, there was a little bit of pushback. I think, he realized that I was serious. And, you know, at one point he said, well, I don't want to be married to anybody else. And I was like, well, I appreciate that, but that's not saying you want to be married to me, And he said, well, we can try counseling. And I was like, we tried, and you didn't want to go, And unfortunately, and this is something that I've heard a lot in recent years and months, is that for women, we leave men mentally long before we leave physically. By the time we say we're done and we're ready to go, we're done, we're ready to go. We've played through all the scenarios in our minds. We've been trying to figure things out for months. We've been looking at other jobs. We've been figuring out places to live. We've been setting up a life that we know that we can step into comfortably before we ever say that we do. Unfortunately, because being a woman in this society, you have to protect yourself. And I don't want to, get into anything like too political, but recently I think that there's been a lot of attention paid to the fact that, women are, over sexualized, we're, not treated fairly a lot of times in society. And there's this inherent protection mechanism, I feel like, that we all have, that we're kind of like born with, where we're just like, constantly there's a little bit of, we have to reserve for ourselves, you know what I mean? There's got to be a little bit of take care of myself here before anybody else, because that's not really something that's afforded to us, through society, if that makes sense. So anyway, point being, I guess my message for anybody else would be, if you're at the point where you feel like you need to leave, then you need to leave, and you're always going to be okay. It doesn't matter if you have to start all over again. If you can't afford it, if you've got nowhere to go, you will figure it out. But, it's not worth losing yourself over, and especially not if it's a situation, and thank God I had never had to go through this, but especially not if it's a situation where you're in any sort of like toxic, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally abusive relationship. Like, all it's going to do is wear you down over time. It's going to dull your sparkle, and that's all you have, so you have to go. You have to go.
Okay. I you touching on that and expounding. So the last thing I just want to kind of ask you, and then I really want to dive into the fitness and a couple more things. But in regards to this post, you said, and the word love is in all caps. So it says, love myself now. I know who I am and what I bring to the table. So how did you, or what was the process, Jocelyn, that you went through to find this love for yourself? And then, obviously we all have different experiences and there's different things for different people, but how would you encourage, people to find this love for themselves? So how did you find this love for yourself? And then how would you encourage people to go about maybe if they're at ground zero, how do they kind of move in that direction for themselves?
So ironically, well, once I got out of that marriage, out of that relationship, I moved up here to Denver and I started dating somebody else, and I kind of jumped into another relationship right away. And it was good at times. It was very bad at times. It was kind of a toxic relationship for a couple of years, and he and I ended up splitting up about a year or so ago. And through all that time, I've been kind of restarting my life and everything, but still I was in a relationship with somebody else who, there's a lot of jealousy issues on his part, very controlling and stuff. And so I finally got tired of it, and we split up. I found myself through being single. I've been single for a year now, like 100% completely single. I think I've gone on like one date. It's been the best, most transformative period for me because you're not trying to live up to anybody else's expectations. I don't have to worry, and it sounds callous, but I don't have to worry about anybody else's feelings. I can do whatever I want to. And to me, that's just, in the small ways. I think when people say like, being single is great because you can do whatever you want to, there is some sort of assumption that it means like sexually, like I'm going to run around and, sleep with a bunch of people. And that's cool if that's your thing. It's just, that's not what I mean. What I mean is I can do whatever I want to. I might go to bed at 7 o'clock tonight. And guess what? I don't have to worry about hurting somebody else's feelings. And they're like, stay up and watch TV with me. If my body says go to bed tonight, I'm going to bed tonight at 7 o'clock, or, just giving myself time to not be distracted by dating and putting that time into some of my hobbies and some of my pursuits. I've discovered that I've got certain talents and interests in doing like, creative styles of makeup. I've started drawing again. I started going back to school and working on my master's in exercise science. You know, decorating my house, home projects. I built a koi pond, spending time with my friends, which has been extremely important. I've gotten into, figuring out what I believe in and what I align with spiritually. And, when I say I know what I bring to the table, it's because I'm not trying to impress anybody else. I have nobody else that I have their expectations to live up to. I just go where I feel like going, and it's allowed me to figure out what's important to me and what's not. And if, not to say that you can't discover who you are and find yourself when you're in a relationship, you absolutely can, but it's just about, being authentic to yourself. And that's all it is. And I wish that I could come up with a more concise way to say that, but it's just recognizing, okay, this is how I feel, and I'm going to explore that, and to be completely honest, I mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, my girlfriend Amy and I, we get up every morning and we talk. And that has been probably the most beneficial relationship I've ever had and the most transformative, because we just say anything and everything to each other that we feel. And I don't know how I was so lucky to find a person like that. But when you meet somebody that you just click with, and I'll use the word soulmate because that's what she is. And, I guess I haven't had to have a relationship because I have that connection with somebody else. But just being able to have people in your life that you can communicate with freely and just say whatever without any judgment. You can say, I feel this way about this situation today. And I know maybe I shouldn't. And I know maybe that's a childish way to look at it, but that's how I feel. And to have that person go, yeah, I identify with that. I can recognize that, or no, I don't agree, but I can appreciate where you are. So it's just having a support system, recognizing your own feelings, being able to express them, and then, ideally having a strong support system.
So that's super powerful when an individual can get to the point where they can just fully not only open up to themselves, but they can fully open up to another human being. Like, there's so much power in authenticity and vulnerability. And I think that's just something that as human beings, like we were made for connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like so many times, uh, as human beings, for whatever reasons, as human beings, like we very few human beings, from my perspective, are 100% authentic and 100% themselves, because it goes back to they're not even 100% authentic or 100% themselves to themselves, right?
Right. Yes.
Because they don't know who they are. And
Yes.
I'm not going to get too fired up because this isn't, this is about you, not about me. But for me, like we all have a purpose, and we all have like a foundation in our lives. But 99.9% of people have no clue what their purpose is. They don't know who they are. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who I am when I step into a relationship with somebody, or when I connect with another human being or other human beings. It's like, if I don't know who I am, then it's like, that relationship will never be 100% real and authentic,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So I agree 100% with what you said, and that's something that I just, in my own life, it's just like, like for me, like I'm in prep right now to compete in a couple bodybuilding competitions in the fall. But like for me, I own a gym, right? But I go to a garage, and I train there just by myself, because it's like, it's so meditative, and I'm like, the sounds I make, the grunts or whatever it is, the thoughts that I'm having when I talk out loud to myself or whatever, like that's 100% authentically me in that moment. Like, I'm not saying anything because a cute girl's watching me in the gym, or I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, whether we're like, oh, I don't care what anybody says or thinks, like when we're around other human beings, whether we know it or not, like there's still something going on there.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
just being able to come to that point, Jocelyn, of like, okay, this is who I am. This is what I want. This is the direction I'm going. Like, that is so powerful. Now, I want to ask you, because I follow Amy on social media too, and she seems like because like, I spend a lot of time on social media, and you can gain a lot in terms of like people's energy and just who they are through social media. Even the people aren't really putting a lot out there, you can still kind of gain a little bit of perspective in regards to who they are. But like, just the way that she posts and just like some of the things she says or whatever, like there's a very calming energy that comes from her social media. So, and then we'll get into the fitness, I promise. But
No,
how
no,
did
no,
you?
you're fine.
And then is that kind of like what she has brought into your guys' relationship? Just kind of like that peace and that calm.
You know what's funny is that Amy's, I don't want to say social media persona, I don't want to say it's different from who she is as a person, but it is. She does have a very, calming energy about her in some ways. However, I would say of the two of us, I'm definitely more of the soother, and the let's look at this from other angles. Let's take a more analytical approach. Let's look at this in a different way. Amy is a ball of energy. She's a firecracker. When I introduce people to her for the first time, or when anybody meets her for the first time, it's love at first sight. She is such a charismatic, energetic, amazing person. And some people, definitely, I guess, get more of that calming energy from her. But she is, an absolute tsunami of just everything. She's energy, she's excitement, she wants to go, she wants to do, she wants to explore. And then, in the next breath, she'll turn around and then she'll just want to go, sit in a body of water and just soothe. She's very also, in touch with herself and her emotions and her spirituality. And that's why we get along so well. It's just, we know ourselves and we know each other. And often we'll be having a conversation and just talking about energies, and I'll just go, okay, your energy just shifted. What just happened there? And she'd be like, yep, I just had a thought about this. And then we'll discuss it, And so, what we have is incredibly rare. Just having anybody else, in a romantic relationship, in a friendship, in a family relationship, who can just recognize your energy. So I guess I say all of that to say that yes, she does. That is how she is as a person. However, that's only the tip of the iceberg. She's incredibly complex, as most of us are.
Cool.
Yeah.
you guys meet then?
So we actually met through the fitness industry in a matter of sorts. When I first competed back in like 2014, 2016 maybe, Amy had already done her time competing. I think her last competition was like 2012, 2013 maybe. But she was still very heavily involved in the fitness industry. She's a massage therapist, and she worked on a lot of competitors and stuff. And somebody referred me to her as a massage client. I was also a massage therapist, so we kind of bonded over that. But at that point in our lives, we didn't. I mean, we got along, and I saw her for a couple of massages, but we didn't really hit it off. And kind of fell out of touch, as it were. And then about a year and a half ago, give or take, I needed a massage, and I was like, I wonder if Amy's still doing massage. I'm going to hit her up. And then I don't know what happened. Just, energetically, we were aligned at that point in time. Our lives were on, similar but different paths. And suddenly we just started hanging out, and we've been attached at the hip ever since. It's been a very interesting last year or so with her.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's we've kind of gone around the fitness stuff a little bit. I want to dive into that, and then we'll kind of wrap up our conversation today. So just you've kind of already explained like why fitness is important to you and all that, but specifically, I want to touch on competing. You just talked about competing, I think back in like 2016 or something for the first time, and then just last weekend you competed again. And I think from your Instagram, there was a break between 2016 and your last competition last weekend. So competing initially, and then why pick it back up for 2021?
So actually, when I moved out here to Colorado in 2013, and started going to school for personal training and all that kind of stuff, and I was working at the supplement store on the weekends, I sort of got immersed in the fitness industry because the other girl that I worked with was a competitor, and the store that I worked at sponsored a couple of different athletes and stuff. And I've always been a bodybuilding fan. I know who all the top athletes are, and ever since those days way back on the bodybuilding.com forums and stuff, and so I decided, no time like the present, and I jumped in, and competed in bikini for the first time in 2014. And it was just a little bit of a rough prep, and I wasn't quite prepared for the mental struggle, and I didn't know the benefits of choosing a good coach and, keeping like a healthy balance. And so it led to just some issues with food, and we spoke about those earlier, but those actually stemmed from competing. And so I tried competing again, this time in figure in 2016. Didn't do the work in the off season, didn't have enough size, again had like a super restrictive, terrible prep, 2 hours of cardio, 1,000 calories a day for a very long time, and it just wore my body and my mind down, and it killed my my desire to want to compete. So over the last few years, not competing and just living a healthy lifestyle and having a healthy relationship with food and actually eating more than I ever thought that I could and stuff, it got me to a place where I realized if I could pick the right coach and, prep in a healthy way, in the way that I know how, with all my nutrition, fitness degrees and experience, I know how to do things the right way, but you get caught up in the I'll do whatever it takes mentality of prep. So I started from a healthy place, hooked up with a coach, Lauren from Atlas Nutrition, and she is amazing. And our priority going through this whole prep was just to keep me healthy. Let's not do anything extreme. And so I'm 5'3" and 3/4, under 5'4", so I'm not a big woman. And for me to be able to do this prep and get lean and get on stage and do well and look great, my calories never got very low. Cardio never got even up to an hour. I was close to it, but that was only for a couple of weeks. I got to like 50 minutes or something like that. Low intensity walking on the treadmill. No drugs whatsoever, no fat burners, no nothing, and just maintained a good, healthy relationship with food, with my body, um, and kept in mind that I'm not trying to go pro. This is just another goal of mine. This is just another thing that I want to accomplish. I guess I just wanted to erase the bad preps. I was like, this can't be all there is to it. I love this sport. There's got to be a way for me to do it in a healthy way. So let's go back and do that again and try it. And we did. And I had only planned on competing once this year, but honestly, I had such a good prep. I did it in such a healthy way. I was still able to see my friends and go out to eat and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I decided to go ahead and do another one in August, and just see if I can place a little bit better, just see if I could push myself a little bit further. Um, and I know I can. So yeah, it was just another personal goal, but it's just because I had such a bad time before. I wanted to make up for that, I suppose. I wanted to turn it around in my mind and make it a positive thing again.
So, question I have that I think is really important in terms of females competing in any type of physique competition, and you've alluded to it, you've talked about it, but like the nutrition side of things, right?
Oh yeah.
There's a lot, and I'm not going to get into all it, but we know that there's a lot of unhealthy eating that goes on in terms of bodybuilding and all that type of physique competition. We know there's a lot of eating disorders that, and you went through that yourself, but there's a lot of eating disorders, both male and female, that are developed physique competition. So what I kind of want to draw from you, Jocelyn, is, you just talked about, this coach that you had for this last prep. It's all about like, let's do this the healthy way. Cause I personally believe that, up to a certain extent, obviously, but like bodybuilding and all that doesn't have to be unhealthy. Like it can be a very healthy endeavor. So from like past experiences to the present experience, how did you kind of like, along obviously with your coach, working with your coach, but how did you kind of like keep food in a healthy manner? Like what did you do? How would you encourage ladies to kind of have that mindset towards food?
So the biggest thing for me was I had not done the work previously to really build my metabolism, to do like a reverse diet. And if people listening don't know what that is, it's exactly what it sounds like. Rather than slowly cutting down calories to get smaller, you're slowly increasing calories for the purpose of trying to just get your body used to running on more food. So Lauren and I started reverse dieting me this last summer, just trying to build up my metabolism. I got up to a place where I was eating, 400 grams of carbs a day some days, which is a lot for a woman my size. And I was leaning out that whole time, so I really just did the off season work to get my body into a healthy place. And unfortunately, I did it too in the past. Too many women, especially, and I'm just going to focus on the women here because it seems to be a problem with us, use competing as a diet. And it is not that. You have to be in a good place metabolically and, of course, mentally, spiritually. But, just on the physical side, you have to be at a place where you can create a deficit. If you're eating 1,300 calories a day and doing an hour of cardio and trying to lose weight, and then you're like, hey, I think I'm going to compete because I really want to get shredded and look like that, you are in the wrong place to start. You need to be doing minimal cardio. You need to be eating as much as you possibly can without gaining any additional body fat. Like, you have to have your body primed because you have to have something to pull from. So even going into this next competition in August, my coach and I took a few days off, of course, and ate whatever I wanted and, that kind of thing, and just did a little bit of a deload, rested my body for a week. But she already has my calories back up to, 2,000 or so. Cardio is already down, 5 days a week, 30 minutes, and we're going to continue to increase calories. And even though I need to get leaner, we still have to take that time to reverse me from this last show, get my metabolism running again so that we have a place to pull from. If you can start out dieting at 2,500 calories versus 1,300 calories, you know what I mean? Like, who's going to have a harder time in prep, right? So that's what these successful competitors do, is that you have to take care of your body. You have to have an off season. And unfortunately, I see far too many ladies out there that, they do a competition, they look great, they just absolutely destroy their bodies and destroy their metabolism though. They turn around, they binge eat for a couple of months, they gain all the body fat back, they still have a suppressed metabolism, and then they diet again for a competition as a way to lose the body fat. It is a vicious, vicious cycle. So, I mean, at the core of it is patience. You have to have patience. And that goes for, in any pursuit, in any goal that you have in life, it's about patience. In bodybuilding, it's not just, patience because it takes time to build muscle. It's the metabolic work that you have to do. You know what I mean? It's the months of, my goal right now isn't to lose fat. My goal right now is to get my body as healthy as it can be. So that's how I was able to go through this prep without having to use any kind of fat burners, and, PEDs and steroids and all that other kind of stuff. Was just taking care of my body and going slow with it, being patient.
Beautiful. Okay, so I want to touch on just training here quickly, and then I want to ask you about the makeup thing, and then we'll wrap it. But training. So you compete in bikini and stuff. What is let's just take the two contrasts here. So like off season, kind of what does the training look like, and then in prep or like pre contest, what is the training look like? If there's a difference, but what do you kind of focus on in terms of your training?
There's not really a huge difference for me. So this little brief period between competitions here, what we are focusing on is building up my glutes a little bit more, and everything else stay the same. So it's going to be a very different time period for me right now because the focus is not on building muscle in any other areas of my body except my glutes, just to bring those up because that's where the emphasis is for bikini, but actually trying to purposefully build that mind muscle connection so that I don't gain any more muscle in my legs or my upper body, because then otherwise I'm going to be too big for my division. I'm already kind of borderline, muscular for bikini. So for me personally, it's a very, very targeted approach over this next few months to to get to a very specific goal. However, leading up to this competition, my training was a little bit mixed. So again, keeping cardio low, as low as possible. For me, the focus is more on rest. So I only train 5 days a week, and have 2 full rest days to give my body a chance to recover. And I feel like that's a very underutilized protocol in training, is rest and recovery. And you being a competitor yourself, being a gym owner, I'm sure you're well versed in this. It's extremely important. And keeping that stress down is optimal for both, gaining muscle and losing body fat. So rest is a huge thing for me. In terms of actual training, it depends on the body part. I tend to utilize a little bit more of a cyclic approach, which is, training very heavy on one body part one day and then doing a higher volume on the same body part like later in the week. So, I might do a day where I'm training heavy shoulders, doing sets of, 5 to 8 reps, and just, really trying to hammer out some like extra heavy weight. Same thing with like glutes, 5 to 8 reps. And then, later in the week, we'll turn around and do a high volume day, 15 to 20 reps and do some different, more like accessory type movements and stuff. So for me, that has been the best approach in order to help me develop like really solid muscle bellies, get like that good muscle density, but then also, be able to stay a little bit more conditioned as well. So
In terms of building up your glutes, what's kind of like the go-to? Do you do like barbell squats and stuff, or do you do kind of like more like kickback type stuff? Do you do a combination? Because obviously, whether females compete or not, a lot of them want nice butts, right? So
yes,
what?
we all want that. We all want that peach. Yep. So.
Right.
Unfortunately, you see on social media all the time, like, if you want this butt, you got to do squats. It's kind of not true for women. If you want some big old tree trunk legs, which a lot of women do as well, yes, then you need to be focusing on your squats and stuff like that. But unfortunately, the glutes are an accessory. They're not the primary focus if you're doing squats and stuff. So for me, it's a glute drive machine I like to use. I use like the kickback machines and stuff like that. I try to focus on the glutes specifically and leave. I don't do any quad work. I do 0 leg extensions. I do 0 squats. I do, for my hamstrings, again, those are already developed to the extent that they need to be for bikini. So I will do high volume, like lying leg curls and stuff like that. But for me, the focus is on the glute medius and the glute max. So I do a lot of abductor work, seated and standing abductor work, a lot of curtsy lunges, things that hit the abductor, so you get that like good fullness to the glutes and you get that good cut kind of on the side that we like to see for bikini. And then doing a mix of different volumes of training styles on like hip hinge exercises. So straight leg deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, and all variations of hip thrusts, glute drive, frog pumps. If you don't know what those are, look those up. But yeah, really just a lot of glute specific work, trying to leave the legs out of it.
And so you mentioned earlier, kind of like the mind to muscle connection. Is that you're trying to kind of build specifically with your glutes? I'm assuming since you mentioned that, you're a pretty firm believer in the power of mind muscle connection when you're training. And if so, just kind of expound on that a little bit, because obviously I know about that, but just maybe for some of the ladies or some of the listeners who don't really understand, like what are you guys talking about in terms of mind to muscle connection? So I'm assuming you believe in it, and if so, kind of just touch on that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's not a matter of believing in it; it's a matter of being aware of it or not. So essentially, mind muscle connection being, thinking about the body part that you are trying to elicit a response from while you are going through whatever range of motion you're going through. So, if I am working on the glute drive machine, I'm going to put my hands on the top of my glutes. I'm going to really sit there and concentrate. And through each rep, I'm going to ask myself, okay, where do I feel this? Am I feeling this in my glutes? If not, I might need to change my foot position a little bit. I might need to adjust the weight. Sometimes having too much weight on a machine or too much weight on a barbell makes it so that you are then, recruiting those accessory movers. You might then, your quads might be taking over and your ego is getting in the way. So, it's really a matter of just constantly checking in with yourself and going, okay, this is the muscle that I think I'm working right now. Is my body telling me that I'm working that muscle right now, or do I feel it somewhere else? I'm doing this, this lat exercise here. Am I feeling it in my lats, or am I feeling it in my biceps? If I'm feeling it more in my biceps, then it's time to change grip, change your seating adjustment, whatever it is. So yeah, 100%. And that's the thing that, my coach and I talked about, leading into this next prep here is, if I want to make some significant changes in my glutes in the next couple of months while I continue to lean out, it's going to be a difficult thing to do. So, we talked about different training styles, and I'm actually going to go train with Heather Grace. She is a legendary IFBB pro. She trains at my gym, and she and I are going to do a session on Tuesday. She's got this thing called a newbie fit machine, where it actually hooks up little electrodes, to your body, and a little electro stimulation and stuff. But just to help me just make sure everything is firing properly and stuff. So sometimes if you're not getting the desired result, you need to change the stimulus. Go try training with other people. If you see somebody who's got some amazing biceps and you just can't seem to get yours to grow, go ask that person if you can train with them and see what they do. You got to get out of your box a little bit, because if you keep doing the same thing that you've always done, you're going to get the same result that you've always gotten, right? So you got to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. So we're going to do things a little differently over the next few weeks, but the primary focus, is going to be on just checking in with myself and going, am I feeling this where I'm supposed to be feeling this? Okay, good. If not, let's adjust.
Excellent. Do you train out of arm thrusts then?
I do, yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. I've had Dylan on the podcast, super cool dude. And that's definitely an elite gym. So
for sure. Yeah.
So I want to touch on, before we wrap up here, I want to touch up on the makeup thing. Because you go to your Instagram specifically, there's a lot of I don't even know, interesting makeup I don't want to call them tutorials, but just pictures, I guess. So just tell us like the makeup thing. Like what does it do for you? Like why do you enjoy it? How did you kind of get into expounding on the makeup outside of just the simple stuff?
I've always, loved the beauty industry, and I don't know. I just a few months ago, this is a recent thing. I've just started kind of getting a little crazy with stuff, and it has snowballed, and I've just, I'm self-taught. But it's kind of like I was talking about earlier with drawing and stuff. I have a creative side, and I have to have a creative outlet. And I think for me, when it comes to drawing, because of the fact that I tend to draw portraits, I have a very specific image of my mind in what I want to achieve when I'm done with it. If I set out to draw a picture of Wolverine, I want it to look like Wolverine, right? I know what the image is going to look like. And for me, sometimes that's a little bit of pressure that I put on myself, right? You asked me earlier if I was a perfectionist. I always feel like I can do better. And when it comes to doing makeup, I'm not married to the outcome. I just go in and I look at all my different palettes and stuff, and I go, oh, blue. And I pick out a blue, and then we just see what happens. And so some days I might end up doing like a sugar skull look on my face. One day I turn myself into Maleficent. I turned myself into a fish one time, or I might just make my lips look like donuts, or put glue flowers to my face, whatever whatever ends up happening is just what happens. And sometimes it does not turn out well. There's a lot of pictures that don't get taken. Um, but sometimes I just come up with a fun little thing and go, okay, I'm going to wear this today. Or, that was fun. Now I'm going to go wash it off. But I feel like everybody has to have, some sort of an outlet, some sort of a creative outlet for whatever that is for you. If it's reading, if it's actually creating something, if it's music, listening to, writing lyrics, whatever. We need some way to express ourselves. And I feel like for me, makeup has become that easy, fun way that I can express myself. And I also just like pretty things. So sparkles and rhinestones and glitter and all this stuff. Yeah, it's just something that I do for myself because it makes me feel good. Yeah.
So, do you kind of have like a long term or maybe like a 2, 3 year? I don't want to call it plan, but I like the word vision better for yourself. Do you kind of have like, obviously, I'm a big proponent of, again, just like living one day at a time. But I think it's really important to have some sort of vision or direction for the future, right?
Yes.
Going back to what the word you use, goals.
Mhm.
So, kind of like a long-term vision for your life or something that you're really working towards, or are you just kind of living for the day and in the moment at this point?
I'd say a little bit of both. So, oh, my dog wants to join the podcast. Hi, Homer. So,
That's okay.
in the interim, in the short term, my next, main goal is competing again. I just want to do a little bit better, a little bit, better showing than I did the last time, and continue to get back into like the fitness industry and show people that it can be done in a healthy way, in a sustainable way. That's extremely important for me, because I've been, self-inflicted, but I've been the victim of it, and I've seen far too many other people be the victim of bad coaching. Um, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, the health part of health and fitness, right? Not just what you look like on the outside. My girlfriend Amy and I, we are actually starting a podcast as well soon. So we've been gearing up and researching that and figuring out how we're getting started with that. So we'll be coming to you soon. But that's just based on the fact that we wake up every morning and we have these incredibly deep conversations. And we just want to share some of those insights with other people. And earlier in the podcast, you asked me at some point in my life, in my earlier years, did I have a thing that I know that I wanted to do? What did I want to be? And it wasn't until recently that I have figured out that my purpose in life, and I hate to sound, sanctimonious in any way, but my purpose in life is to help other people figure out who they are, so getting into essentially life coaching and just helping people open up and express themselves and figure out who am I? How do I live an authentic life? And that's really what the podcast is going to be about. It's going to be incredibly goofy because we are just ridiculous women, but just having a good time and just learning to open up, be yourself, express yourself, and go after the things that you want to go after, whether they're big or small or in between. So, longer term goals is, of course, to establish that, get that going, continue to develop in my aerospace engineering career. But my goals in life are small. My goal is simply to be happy, and whatever that looks like on any given day is subject to change. So, yeah.
That podcast is going to be good.
Yes.
And, if you guys like, because obviously I lived out in Colorado for like about 2.5 years, and have a pretty big network out there, people that are involved in podcasting and stuff. So if you guys need any help with some people out there in Denver. So before I ask you the last question, Jocelyn, I want to kind of just give you the platform just to say anything that's maybe in your heart, or on your mind, kind of any last words if you have any, with the listeners. So are there any thoughts, any last words, anything that you kind of want to just say in closing?
Honestly, just for anybody who has stuck around and listened to this and gotten to this point in the last hour and a half, I appreciate that, your interest in hearing what I have to say. I feel like I'm a fairly unremarkable person in most regards, but I'm just a person who, is trying to do my best for myself each day and be a sense of support and a beacon of hope for the people around me. So if there's anybody that I can help in any way, please feel free to reach out to me. Quentin has mentioned my Instagram several times. That's probably the easiest way to reach me. I am just Jocelyn _ Brianne, BRIANNE. But yeah, I do, offer online coaching. I don't really do it for any monetary gain, but if there are people that have specifics that need help just trying to get started on a healthy, sustainable lifestyle, please let me know. I can refer you to great coaches if you're looking to compete, or just kind of talk to you and help you out, get you started. What are some good resources? Figuring out your own macros and nutrition and stuff like that. I feel like when it comes to, fitness and nutrition and everything, it's just knowing where to start and staying away from the gimmicks and the fad stuff. So if I can help people in any way to avoid some of those pitfalls, 100%, please reach out and let me do it. But no, other than that, just I try to make it a point every day to just honor where I'm at, and give myself grace and be where I'm at, and recognize what I feel that particular day, good, bad, or otherwise. So I encourage everybody just to try to have a little bit of grace and a little bit of patience with themselves as well, and see what that develops into. If you are able to get in touch with your own feelings, I feel like the whole world is going to open up for you. So start there and let me know how it goes.
So the last question I'm going to ask all my guests, and I'm going to ask you, Jocelyn, is what sets your soul on fire?
I think just the pursuit of something more, something bigger. Trying to figure out what my next step is and how can I be of service to other people is kind of where I'm at in my life. I can recognize that I have been blessed in so many ways, and while I've had to create my life on my own and wasn't really handed anything material, I would say that in terms of just my family support, who I've been able to grow into as a person, I feel like I've been blessed in so many ways. So I just want to be able to give back to other people in some way, and be of service. So trying to find a way to do that. That's what sets my soul on fire. So whether it be the podcast, whether it be one-on-one kind of coaching people, or whether it just be being a friend to somebody who needs me to be a friend to them at that point in time, that's what gets me through the day.
Excellent. So you already mentioned your Instagram and everything. So I just want to thank you, Jocelyn, for taking over an hour and a half of your time and day just to jump on the podcast with me. share your story. I kind of just knew from your social media and a little interaction back and forth in prep that you were just going to keep it real and shoot straight, which I always really value that and appreciate that. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you reaching out and asking me.
For sure. So 127 Fit podcast listeners, once again, I just want to thank you so very much for your listening ears. They're always greatly appreciated. If you would like to find out more about the guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast, or if you would like to find out more about myself personally, you can find all of that information on Instagram at 127fit. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. If you guys would do a huge favor and please leave a 5-star written review, especially within the iTunes Apple podcast app, that will be super cool, because the name of the game of the 127 Fit podcast is people share their stories, and those who listen would be positively impacted. So as you give the written reviews, more people are going to find the podcast, and more people are going to be positively impacted. One other favor I'd ask, as you found great value in Jocelyn's episode of the 127 Fit podcast, or maybe you found great value in a previous episode, I just ask whatever episodes you're finding that value in of the 127 Fit podcast, that you would take that episode or episodes and share it on all your social media stories. So Facebook stories, Instagram stories. Again, more people will have an opportunity to listen and be positively impacted. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest or guest for the 127 Fit podcast, you can just send me an email or give this email to your friend or acquaintance and just introduce yourself, and we'll take it from there. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. And then per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.